upon Government Order of the Day number 3.
Education Legislation Bill, third reading.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Education Legislation Bill be now read a third time. Mr Speaker, this government has great ambitions for the children of New Zealand. We're focused on continuously improving the education system, all the levers that contribute to supporting principals and teachers, boards made up of parents, providing the best education possible for our young people. We want to make sure that they leave our education system connected, confident, lifelong learners who are able to both foot it here at home and participate internationally if they so choose. So it's important that legislation supports that ambition of ours, and this bill in its third reading today is an example of how we are giving structure and force to that ambition. Mr Speaker, I would like to thank the individuals and organisations who took the time to make a submission on the bill, to the Education and Science Committee for their attentive consideration, and to the officials who worked on this bill. Mr Speaker, there are a number of elements that are described in this bill and reflect the policy intent we have as a government, which can be succinctly described as parents having choice, schools and early learning providers and tertiary institutions having flexibility such that the provision they offer suits the personalised and diverse needs of our young people, and that those young people are getting real results in real time. And you can see that set of policy imperatives in the provisions within this bill. For example, we are providing for principals to be in charge of more than one school at one time. We are not requiring that occur, we are simply providing an option. And there are circumstances around the country where that option is necessary. Those circumstances are primarily rural and amongst smaller schools. Now, of the 2,500 schools we have across the country, about 40% of those have rolls of 100 to 150 or less. That means providing leadership, exemplary leadership of teaching and of schools for our young people in every one of those. And there have been times when that option hasn't been readily available, or it hasn't been as successful as we might have wished, because the particular principal available may not have been, if you like, fit for purpose for that particular community. So the provision in this bill is very much about where these circumstances arrive, there will be an option at law for boards that agree to do so to appoint a principal to more than one school, and clearly where the principal herself or himself wishes to do that. So again, I want to reiterate, it is not in this bill requiring that this occur, but that there be an option. Now, another area that reflects this government's investment into the quality of leadership and teaching is in our provision for new trainee teacher category. We see this most effectively, well, it's providing for a mix of both academic training, which we have through our initial teacher education, but where there is a period of employment for that trainee who has not yet finished their qualification to be able to practice in a school, we want to make that lawful. And a really good example of that is the Teach First program that we are funding, where people with great qualifications who think they might like to be teachers, and we think that would be great if they were, and have the opportunity to both blend academic training and practical experience teaching in schools, that we make that possible, and this law does that. And we have seen great success out of that practice. Tāmaki College, for instance, springs to mind. Another example of the flexibility imperative that I mentioned earlier is that this bill provides for more flexible hours around schools. It is not about less hours for schools to be offering teaching, but it's saying that the two-hour blocks that are required for schools to offer, which by the way doesn't mean it has to be a minimum either, can be offered at slightly different times or at different times from the conventional model of 9 to 3. As 21st century living for all of us as parents, some of us as grandparents, have found greater diversity and flexibility in the way we learn, the way we work and so forth, we want to make sure that our education legislation underpins flexibility of choice where in a community the board having consulted with its parent community and anyone else affected could look to change times, and that may become more desirable as more and more of our schools and early childhood centres form the fabulous communities of learning and work together to make sure that that whole of pathway is organised as efficiently and as effectively as the families in those communities. So we're providing for that. Another example of flexibility of choice for parents and opportunities for providers is that this bill provides for ECEs, home-based ECEs, to also offer out-of-school care opportunities for young people. That means that parents with differently aged children, as all parents are, who have more than 2 or 3 children, who are not twins or any born at the same time, are able to find a carer who can provide for kids who are at the age before going to school, as well as those kids who are already at school. So again, we're just providing for that. We've also anticipated that online learning, online access is going to be a growing part of the reality of young people's educational experience. And in this bill, we are providing for the national student number to be used as one credible access online rather than multiple entries by the same person. And we know that in practice, this will be welcomed by students. The other thing we're providing for in here is for tertiary education institutions to apply to become sponsors of partnership schools kura hauora. And in addition, that there are provisions for their investment in related entities. And we are very keen to see that we get the greatest utility out of all of the educational providers and institutions that we have available for us. And what this does, again, it doesn't require tertiary educational institutions to do either of these activities, but where that choice is made by them, then this law will support that to be the case. Now, there are also some administrative matters that we want to clean up, if you like, or make more administratively effective in this bill provides for that. Now, in particular, there is kind of an outdated provision that we are improving, which requires the Ministry of Education to make provision for financial reporting and support for schools, and we are clarifying how that should actually occur by providing for it in this bill, Mr. Speaker. Here it is here. We want to make sure that operational specifications relating to the provision of payroll services to school boards is unnecessary and is removed. In addition, that the State Services Commissioner can approve generic or specific terms and conditions of employment that are additional to but not contrary to those that have been agreed to in collective agreements, but out of time may be necessarily. And then finally, there are a multiplicity of provisions in other acts. Not all things that relate to education are in the Education Act, and this bill updates outdated aspects of these statutes while ensuring the original intent of the acts are honoured appropriately. So those are the main provisions that are set out in this bill, Mr. Speaker. And I think that having run through what the specific provisions are, that all members of the House can see how they support our policy intent of providing choice to parents. Parents have the greatest interest in their children, as do grandparents in their grandchildren, and we want to ensure that the choices available for them are supported at law. Equally, we want to make sure that the educational providers have as much flexibility to design services that meet the different and personal needs of those young people that are in their care. And finally, Of course, the whole purpose of this updated legislation is to make sure that our young people are getting the best opportunities available to them, whether in their earliest learning years, whether at primary school through the use of out-of-school care, or whether at secondary and going on into tertiary options. Mr. Speaker, I think this bill admirably sets it all out, and I now commend the bill to the House.
Members, the